You must have heard of Hornsey College of Art.
Yeah, wasn't that where all the trouble was last summer?
I wrote the local paper about it. After all, we're the ones who pay the rate. We're the ones who suffer.
Just a load of overeducated brats, that's what I say.
What's this?
Our students never done a good day's work in their life.
What the hell are art colleges for, anyways?
Layabouts. A dose of national service will do them good. Load of bohemians. What's the use of learning to paint?
Well, they've got too much time on their hands. They do nothing but cause trouble.
They call it trouble. But for the first time, on the 28th of May, we began to think for ourselves.
Cézanne, Picasso, Matisse, brightness, bright colours.
Because it was, a career design.
In terms of a career, well,
I don't know, I think when I left school...
The voice of promise. The art school promises you something different from ordinary education, more basic, more free.
Freedom to be able to investigate ideas and a way of life that you think you're suited to.
Same way of going about work, same attitude to work.
Dance like more interesting than any university.
You won't have to conform. You can dress how you like.
I thought I'd be able to express myself instead of going along with other people's knowledge.
I didn't get on with the teachers at school.
It was the only way to escape.
An artist's life, then success, fame perhaps.
It is an elite situation, there's no doubt about it.
Creamy, elite group of people. I thought it was rather grand at the time.
And we were all well aware that we were 1 in 10.
And obviously, I wanted somewhere to paint.
Success. A top designer in the 1960s and 70s. It's the designer who matters.
That exciting plastic age that everybody discovered,
A fast car, swinging, exciting. In the public eye, rich, a lot of money. These are the years of training that will help you to achieve all this.
And what's more, art education had been studied by a government commission.
The Coldstream Council, set up to review and revitalise art education, reported in 1960. It set up a new national diploma in art and design to be equivalent in quality and in standard of achievement to a university first degree.
It set up a new order, a new freedom. Art education was to have academic equality with the other subjects of further education. It has done more for the respectability of art education than anything in the previous 100 years.
So, we were to be respectable, but not all of us.
We recommended that an independent body should be established to administer the new award. The National Council for the Diploma in Art and Design, the Summerson Council, was set up. First, it had to decide which colleges reached a high enough standard to offer the award in the first place.
85 colleges applied for diploma recognition. Only 29 received it. The result of the report was an unholy scramble for prestige and publicity to catch the eyes of the Summerson Council. Art schools, as well as art students, were confused about their aims.
Prestige, publicity, maybe you're going to get high-class designers, but, does one want high-class designers at the expense of the people who are really much more important?
But Hornsey, the principal, who got publicity photos into the colour supplements, had his own prestige projects. There was the Electric City car project, for instance. It was part of the swinging neon-lit future that we were offered. The result of that was that for a year, industrial design students weren't allowed to use the workshops unless they worked on the electric car, and exploded the college in size, and consequently exploded it into fragments.
Hornsey College of Art, main building, top of Crouch End Hill.
3 miles away, 1 shilling on the 41 bus, Hornsey College of Art, South Grove, Tottenham.
1 mile down the road, Hornsey College of Art, Page Green.
3 miles further north, change at Wood Green, Hornsey College of Art, Bowes Road on the North Circuit.
One mile back, Hornsey College of Art, Alexandra Palace.
Here, in these slum quarters, far-flung over the wastes of North London, instead of the stimulating, exciting work we had hoped for, what actually took place was a boring, routine, 9-to-5 chore.
You may think that the art college is happy-go-lucky, but it is not. Students and staff have no say in the decisions that affect their lives and beliefs. They feel bitter and cynical.
You may think the art college is free and easy, but it isn't. The hours are rigid and disruptive. The expensive machinery is not available for those who need it.
You may think that an art college knows where it stands, but it doesn't. These posters and objects we design, what are they for? When we paint a picture, who understands it? What are we really trying to say?
Every 5 years, the Somerset Council will reassess colleges offering diploma courses.
The quinquennial review was due at Hornsey during the academic year of 68-69. Instead, the students anticipated this and initiated their own quinquennial review.
We are determined to consider what society needs and what we have to give. There are times in history when things have to change.
We are in authority. We have taken control of the college.
Okay, seminar, room F. Here it is, type it up.
How many copies do you want?
Well, I don't know, I mean, it's general
Well, how many
meeting,
rooms
isn't
do
it?
they go around?
Jesus, I don't know, look, can you do it, really?
If you are really concerned about what is going on to the college, the college is open all the time, and we would welcome any of the ratepayers, obviously since they live in the borough of Cambridge.
I'll go on with you, and we'll worry about it when we get up there.
I mean, Chris Pierce's car is broken down, and somebody's got to go down to Covent Garden. Otherwise, we have 500 people in here tomorrow wanting bacon and eggs.
Yeah. Whole day.
Seminar report.
Oh, a little day with the curly hair. We need some money. Yeah, but where can you find Prue at 4 o'clock in the morning?
I don't know.
Sleeping in the, what's that little room, staff room? No, I can't read your writing, but I'll make it up. Like 300 of these copies for general meeting. That's what you can do in about 10 minutes.
And for 6 weeks, I was kept going by feeling an immense affinity with people and immense concern about what was going on and terrifically happy.
Awake 25 hours a day.
And then on top of that, thinking and coming up with good documents, good ideas.
This great fund of energy to create.
I enjoyed having tense conversations while one was swabbing down the corridors.
We painted the whole place up.
There was fun working on the switchboard because one day somebody spilled coffee down it and the thing shorted. So there was a great explosion.
I enjoyed working in Gestetner machine while people around me were asleep.
Canteen seemed to be a centre of attraction really. They pulled the partition down, didn't they? Got the staff and the students together at last.
We reject the traditional relationship between staff and students.
Right, well, we don't want this to work.
It served as a complete division between staff and students.
Symbolic of the attitude, completely. You know, that you're getting rid of something which is a symbol of the thing which you oppose.
Well, it certainly left a bit more light into the place and made it more like a canteen than a prison.
Whereas before, if there was a queue in the canteen, it used to be the usual thing to jump the queue by going up to somebody at the head. But during the sit-in, nobody ever did that. Ever.
Working in the canteen.
The local supermarket gave us sale or return.
All through the night.
Special menu that day.
Perhaps the light couldn't even fry an egg without breathing.
People have changed remarkably.
We had a lot of contact with people.
That's the press office.
It gave me a whole load of confidence, really.
The Daily Express came to the college to make what they say was a feature film about the sit-in.
Entrance, where everybody comes in and signs their name.
And we didn't think about it anymore until I went to the cinema one day, and I saw an advertisement for the Daily Express, and to my utter horror, I saw a picture of myself saying it all happened so suddenly. They hadn't told us they were going to use it for an advertisement. They didn't in any way get in touch with me to see if it was okay. You know, this was the diabolical levels that the newspapers could go to in exploiting a situation which they really weren't interested in. And as far as I was concerned, it just wrapped up journalism.
General meeting.
People were able to get inside each other's skins. They all felt at one.
That was always the best place to sit up there. They could see everything.
They were communicating. It was one big group.
People didn't attack you because you didn't know what you wanted or didn't know what you felt or didn't understand.
It was just a very, very good feeling.
Chairman, Speaker.
Here's today's agenda if you haven't got a copy. Item 1, procedure established. Item 2, chairman established. Item 3, secretary.
I think the actual talking was much more important than the neat, pithy conclusions we came up with.
The chairman will attempt to keep speakers expressing themselves rationally rather than emotionally. And if negative suggestions are made, they should be not allowed to stand without constructive ideas following them.
Yeah, they go again. Those are the things that were always put on television. People with their arms up with their hands up.
You know, I mean, it existed in its own context before, and the most fantastic thing about it was that it was out of context. And that, I mean, I wasn't in context when I was doing it, and everything that happened, I mean, there was no time, there was nothing. And to sort of do a film of people making pancakes and things like this, it don't mean anything now, I don't think, because, I mean, it was just part of a whole big thing. And it was the sort of essence of it before that mattered. And things, and doing little bits of film, I don't think captured this essence. And yet, you know, I mean, it's ridiculous, because I just don't know what to put in its place in that, because it's important that it's made, because it's saying something important, but I can't define what it is. Why is the art college as it is? What is the college for? What is our education for? What is art for? Why is society as it is? What do we want to make of it?
Art education is in a bloody mess. Art education is in a bloody mess.
And again?
Art education is in a bloody mess.
We began to read and to try and understand the Coldstream and Summerson reports, and we found that their implementation in practice was even more rigid than their terms. So we started to examine them in greater detail, and that seminar went on all night.
There are 4 provisions. 1, that as a general rule, students entering diploma courses should have 5 O-level passes in GCE, or
GCE's got to do with art. Yeah.
It is the Minister's policy that entrance to the diploma courses should have reached a satisfactory standard in general education. The only practical way of prescribing a general educational standard in this kind of context is in terms of the General Certificate of Education.
But surely a GCE in academic subjects, there's no evidence of ability in art subjects.
With the new higher standard of the diploma, we must ensure minimum literacy among students, real evidence of book learning, and being able reasonably to express himself.
Why? Why?
It should be self-evident.
But all that GCs ensure is the ability to pass exams like GCs, nothing more.
Look here. The local authority has to be convinced of the standing of art courses. After all, it is they who finance them and they who supply the grants. A GC is a minimum standard for general education. In other words, we need to make art education respectable. Don't forget that there is a loophole for people of exceptional artistic ability. The illiterate genius, so to speak. The students who may be temperamentally allergic to conventional education.
In document 11, we quoted several examples of very well qualified and able people, not illiterate geniuses, who were prevented from getting places by bureaucratic insistence on the letter of the 5 GCEs. It has proved to be a very rigid system.
Well, I realize that not everyone with GCEs has the intuition necessary to become an artist. We have left a doorway. You would make it a triumphal arch. Besides, if you don't have GCEs, what do you have?
Art education is about asking questions, but GCE is only about answering them.
Basically, GCEs are class biased, just like 11 plus, which still goes on in a lot of places. They rely very heavily on verbal ability, and it's precisely the child who comes from a poorer home, who isn't surrounded by books, who isn't surrounded by a rich verbal culture.
In fact, we've progressed from challenging GCEs for art education to challenging GCEs as a whole.
All diploma courses shall include complementary studies. By this we mean any non-studio subjects that may strengthen and give breadth to a student's training. In other words, academic content.
Why?
I must repeat, if the diploma is to be respectable in academic circles, it must have a certain amount of academic content.
In many ways, we feel that art education, although it offers a very special form of education, the artist is, after all, a sort of intuitive person, not necessarily literate. General studies are intended to add literacy to his education.
You see how people assume that artists and designers don't need to think in order to do their own work.
The image still exists of the wild, illiterate artist who, despite his antisocial qualities, must be respected because of his mysterious creative ability.
The trouble is that art students have colluded with this belief and acted out in their day-to-day living, just because someone once told them they were artistic.
Which of us are they talking about? Some of us are supposed to be sober, ordinary, respectable students. Others are literate geniuses.
We feel that people who are not primarily concerned with art and design ought to be freely available whenever they're needed, not on a compulsory basis, but as an important and necessary service.
We also think it will be generally acceptable that an art training at diploma level should include some serious study of the history of art. After all, this is the subject most closely related to the rest of your course.
That's all very well in theory, but it doesn't seem useful in practice. Art history is the one subject with a written examination, so it's used to test the student's ability to write English.
I would no more involve art schools in the history of art than surgical schools in the history of surgery.
Who the hell's that?
The diploma shall be equivalent in quality and standard of achievement to a university first degree.
I don't think we need degree equivalence. How can you compare an art school with a university? They're completely different.
It came about after the war. People had a passion for having letters after their name. It is snobbery left over from the 20s and 30s.
However, students not eligible for diploma courses may take a vocational course.
Of course, that implies that the vocational course is of a lower social standard than the diploma course.
Oh no, not lower, just different.
There is in the field of industrial production the need for large numbers of workers who are not necessarily creative, but who are sufficiently responsive to the ideas of those who are, to be able to interpret their designs perceptively and sympathetically.
It is one who, although capable of appreciating creative work, is not normally called on to initiate such work.
In other words, it's the diploma student who's supposed to have the ideas, but his lines won't be straight and the ink will run. And the vocational student will come along afterwards and do the technical job of tidying up after him.
You can't accept a vocational course which deliberately sets out to create an artisan class. You just can't label people in this way.
At the moment, education is just merely an economic investment.
There'll be a year's pre-diploma course which should ensure a high standard at entrance.
Most students come onto a pre-dip course from school where they have been doing A-level art or O-level art. And the gap between the sort of art taught in the schools and that in the college is so different that the sort of shock of coming onto a pre-dip course in an art school is very unnerving, and it throws the student off balance.
During their pre-diploma year, students should learn enough of the various branches of art and design to have some idea by the beginning of the diploma course where their main interests and aptitudes lie.
In fact, there's enormous strain put on pre-dip students to prove themselves and to get a diploma place.
Like taking inanimate matter and forcing it through arbitrary channels.
And so all sort of thoughts about getting a good education or becoming aware of what you're actually being taught or trying to discover your own way are forgotten in this sort of race for getting a place on a course.
The student, therefore, has to make a decision, and a decision in this system which is irrevocable.
Anyway, we usually can't choose. It's the interviewers who choose for us.
Next. Why not?
Why not?
Next. Graphics.
Why not?
Next.
So we get assigned to an area.
3D.
Courses shall be divided into 4 areas: fine art, graphics, three-dimensional design, and fashion and textiles.
It's very similar in concept to a car production line, where a body enters the line, and from that point it's predetermined as to what model it's going to be. But in art education terms, it just doesn't work that way because you're using human beings.
Now we enter an area and follow it through to the final assessment. This is a linear system.
If you had 5 production lines, each producing different models, one body only ever becomes one model, whereas a designer, when he's a designer, has to know a lot about many things, and if he's only on one production line, he just can't pick up the variety.
We must have another structure where each student can choose his own path and acquire the relevant abilities through personal involvement.
For convenience, we called this a network structure.
This present premature and irrevocable decision which is forced on student applicants is symptomatic of this insincerity of our society. It's just a huge pretense that the young are perfectly free to decide what they're going to study.
In fact, the choice between the 4 areas is only relevant if you, first of all, accept the status quo of the art college in society. The real choice is the freedom to question that status quo and to question whether or not the art college is a viable educational medium.
I think the art colleges are wasting their time. Just literally. There are lives, there's talent, there's the equipment, there's the ability, there's everything there. And this socially has been completely wasted. There's industrial designers at Hornsey who are doing ridiculous projects. There are graphic designers who are
doing pieces of typography for catalogues to sell roses. With the full potential of an art college, and combining with the universities and the architectural colleges, etc., one could redesign hospitals, you could redesign towns, you could do almost anything. The scope's limitless. So they would be contributing to the structure of society rather than contributing to an elite minority in society.
What college as it is? What is the college for? What is our education for? What is art?
Art, as it is known in this society, is generally divided into two categories. One category is called good art, the other category is called bad art. The people who inform us of what is good art and what is bad art are called the intelligentsia. They claim that art possesses certain elements which makes it undeniably great or undeniably bad. But this art is not timeless. You only appreciate abstract art when somebody explains the subtleties to you, and that somebody has got to be the artist, or else he's got to be an art critic or someone who believes that he understands art.
First experiments in the invention of a non-verbal, visual mode of communication are still distinctly organic in feeling. Lines fluctuate and represent not only movement, but purpose and growth.
Art becomes a luxury. Only those with the required amount of free time and money can begin to learn to appreciate art, to enjoy art. I mean, if you're a steel worker or something, any kind of worker, when you've done a 12-hour shift and you come home in the night and you're tired and you just can't begin to appreciate what's known as good culture.
Colours are associative, not only in the sense that they express human emotions, joy, sadness, etc., but also in that they signify emotive aspects of our external environment.
Most of the big major concerns in this country, the big record companies, the television companies, they realize this and they exploit everyone to a fantastic degree. We can call this counterculture. And the artist, in this respect, must be the most guilty man, of all in society, because he realizes that the prevalence of this counterculture and the evil being counterculture, and he professes to know what's good culture and what's bad culture, but what does he do about it? He does absolutely nothing.
Although he's brash and importunate and upsets people.
He does nothing except he titillates the bourgeoisie. He titillates the boss class. He pleases art critics. He pleases all those parasites who live off the workers' sweat and blood. He licks the boots of the establishment and supports them in a most disgusting, servile manner.
There is a vague, undefined arrangement of colours that will express this hitherto unarticulated feeling.
We must begin to work now, as artists, to create a new culture. And a culture which grows not from some so-called intelligent elite who live in Hampstead or, Chelsea or somewhere, but it must be a culture which belongs to ordinary men and women. A culture which is created by them and which exists for them. And to achieve that, we must by necessity achieve revolutionary social changes. And they will only take place when everyone, workers, housewives, students, teachers, everyone alike, when they begin to question and rise against those values in society which the establishment imposes upon us.
If you could plan education for, the type of people who are filling this room at the moment, completely absorbed and dedicated to the problems of art education and their own education, the development of their personalities, if you could plan education for a body of students who were consistently of that kind, how very much faster you would get along.
What's so special about us? The only reason that you can't assume everyone is like us is that they're not allowed to be, as we weren't when we stuck to our role as good students.
But education has got to have some rigid parts to it. It's got to have an establishment. It's got to have a respectable lid on top. It's got to have, because I think it would tend to fall apart. There's got to be some element of rigidity about it.
You officials, so full of your dignity, despise yourselves. And since you do so, you cannot believe that your friends, the ordinary human being next to you, can do anything great. You may isolate him, call him a genius, anything to rid yourself of his proximity.
With the rapidly increasing rate of change, a designer who is trained only in terms of current techniques cannot expect to survive for long. If he's going to adapt to this change, he'll need an understanding of some basic principles and strategies.
Students should be learning how to adapt, how to change. We believe that the learning process only takes place where the student is able to assess the relevance and the importance of his work.
Design education, which is not essentially a training in self-education, is useless.
Declaration by members of staff. We applaud and welcome the work done by the students. Stop. We are willing to enter a dialogue with them in order to hammer out a new educational system. ... We undertake to destroy once and for all the destructive image, of departmental fragmentation, and affirm that there can be no return to the status quo.
The membership shall consist of all students, staff and employees of Hornsey College of Art. The basis for our discussions has been the idea of participatory democracy.
You know, I mean, we all decided as a group of people that we wanted to make certain changes in art education. And you assume that there is someone who can make that change. But, you know, you go first to the principal, then to the local education authority, then to Somerson and Coldstream, and then to the Department of Education and Science, and Shirley Williams. And you find that all these people say, what wonderful students you are. We really are lucky to have you in our college, but unfortunately we can't make the kind of changes you're asking for. Each one passes the responsibility for making change onto another committee.
I'm very glad you came to see me, and I'm delighted to hear you students working things out for yourselves and saying such thoughtful things. We especially agree with you. In fact, some of the most respected authorities in education are saying the same things as you do.
When Somerson came to the college, we were greatly encouraged because one of the things he said was the initiative for change must come from the art colleges themselves.
The theory is fine. The trouble is that it's not our problem. It's a local problem. I must emphasize that this is not something we are empowered to deal with. This is something that can only be dealt with at local council level. However, we are keeping things under review.
So in spite of our original dislike of politics, we had no alternative but to come to terms with the local authorities.
We need flexibility in our work and in our thinking.
Why don't they address me as alderman?
We are being forced to waste our time learning skills that are already out of date.
Why don't they stand up when I come into the room?
We want the sort of education to enable us to expand as people, to use our imagination.
Yes, I quite agree. Could you call my car, please?
I just don't understand it. Everybody agreed with us. We've convinced them that we're sincere.
Yeah, well, from their point of view, it's irrelevant whether you're sincere or not. For the first thing, you've disrupted the smooth running of the system, and they can't stand that. And for a second thing, you've introduced the element of change, and change is dynamite.
It's obvious that we can't do anything through the normal channels, because we've done that. The only thing to realize is that there's no point in doing anything within the system.
Normal channels may be just instruments of manipulation. People must learn to make decisions for themselves.
When we started this sit-in 11 days ago, we wanted to change things within the system. But now we want to change the whole system.
But Alderman Lawrence Baines, a 48-year-old washateria owner and insurance broker and chairman of the Board of Governors, says,
"We thought we were dealing with adults who wanted to reach a satisfactory conclusion for the good of the college, but nothing surprises me anymore."
Of course, one of the difficulties has been that the students are so democratic. They refuse to appoint leaders.
Find the leader, that's our problem. There's always a ringleader.
Try general studies. After all, philosophy comes from general studies.
Of all the people who spoke in the sit-in, you'll find none of them were artists or designers.
Anarchy is breaking out.
After all, I've been to many cocktail parties on their behalf.
This is going beyond a joke.
The key words which were employed at Hornsey meant different things to the two sides. Words like democracy, participation, or freedom, or change, or even the very word student itself meant different things to both sides, and we didn't realize this at the time. We seemed to be talking the same language, but in fact we weren't. We were in a non-communication situation most of the time.
I'm sure Alderman Baines doesn't really understand what we're saying. This is something that benefits us all, including the local council.
We do understand, and we are not having it. This is a pure Chinese Red Guard effort, and we are not having it.
What a man.
everybody tried so hard for so long to be reasonable and to appear to be reasonable in the terms understood by the other side. And this was a complete waste of time, because from their point of view, if we had been really reasonable, the sit-in would never have occurred at all.
We felt we ought to be serious so that when we presented our arguments, they would be accepted and perhaps understood.
Well, look, they're reasonable people and so are we. I mean, we don't believe in violence or provocation. And they'll understand us and give us what we want.
As time went by, we realized that the authorities excelled at an appearance of reason. And this was exactly what they could use against us.
What we should have been doing instead was, so to speak, developing our own language, making propaganda for what we believed in and stood for our own world, like making this film, for instance. We should have been doing things like this then, instead of engaging in these endless non-negotiations.
I'm really a very simple man, and I mean what I say.
You realize all this business has cost the alderman a great deal of money?
Why don't we put an end to this silly farce? Look at this pile of paper they keep turning out.
That scruffy crew couldn't produce a peanut. They couldn't write this stuff. Look for the communists and the agitators. That's what we must do. Are there any foreigners in the place?
I think it may all have something to do with certain people's Sunday morning seminars.
Well, as I understand it, there's a clever and dangerous psychologist who takes his students home and incites them.
That's just another example of the way that people with suppositions influence the interpretation they put on events. Yes, I did have students come home. I used to open my door to them 1 day a week, but this was because facilities in college were so bad for any kind of social interaction between anybody. The same kind of thing, of course, happened when we came to do the negotiation. Because I had been perceived as politically motivated, this meant that any negotiation, from my point of view, was suspect. I was thought, at least, I was trying to bring the two sides together in some kind of rational resolving of the conflict. But of course, nothing of the kind was happening.
I was in a meeting in the college one morning about lunchtime, and David Joseph came in, and he said to me, "Do you have a party card?" And I said, "Whose party?" And he said, "No, you fool, a communist party card." I said, "No." He said, "Well, you might like to know that I've just come from a head of department's meeting at which a report has been read out that's supposed to have come from a special branch, which names you and 4 other people as conspirators with known political motives." I was very surprised to hear this, because I asked him then who these people were, and I realized that in fact I'd only met 2 of them. 2 of them, I didn't even know what they looked like.
The day I heard about that, I remember feeling absolutely naive and childlike, you know, that the whole of society around me was quite different than I always ever thought it was.
There are men who have dehumanized themselves and would further dehumanize us. There are men who are terrorized by the vision of human autonomy and spontaneity.
We are regretfully forced to the conclusion that this was revolt for revolt's sake, the ultimate aim being the wrecking of the college by a disgruntled minority of staff and students.
This is my college and I'll do what I like with it!
The purpose of the college does not seem to be understood by many students and some staff. We are a practical training ground for students, most of whom find jobs in teaching or industry later. For both these careers, some personal discipline is necessary. Anarchic procedures during training would be a disservice to the students.
There were only about 30 people in college when the dogs came. Within half an hour, there were 500.
We were trained to value abstract ideas like reason and work. Then these become tools to be used against us.
The public got restless. We had to show our authority.
It became unmistakably clear that the governors, the principal, and most of the heads of departments were unprepared to concede one iota of power.
One has to realize precisely the strength and ruthlessness of the opposition. There has been talk of student violence. What have the students done that compares with this for violence?
The college could build an 8-foot wire fence around the perimeter and then leave a 10-foot pathway to build another fence. I could put me men and dogs in no man's land in between, and we'd have the place under siege. If any of the students tried to get in or out, the dogs would rip them to pieces. But we were made to look too ridiculous. I realised after 10 minutes that the students would not be provoked into violence.
Dear Sir,
The appalling events at Hornsey College of Art can only be described as anarchy or more brawl. Stop the grants. We've closed the college if need be. Winkle out these communist agitators. What we need is a return to national service to stabilize these young people.
In fact, the college is financed with only 10% of local rates. The rest comes from a national pool. And since very few students actually come from Haringey, there is no feeling of a local college. But its control is in the hands of local councillors. And what is more, the local ratepayers feel personally involved.
A bunch of crackpots here in Haringey, or in Grosvenor Square, or Paris, or Berlin, or Mexico, can never overthrow an established system. We, the 9 to 5, the Monday to Friday, semi-detached suburban wage earners, we are the system. We are not victims of it. We are not slaves to it. We are it, and we like it. Does any bunch of tuppeny-halfpenny kids think they can turn us upside down? They'll learn.
the ratepayers' money was being misused. Merely we, the members of Hornsey College of Art, were trying to correct that misuse.
We lived your dreams for 7 weeks and you didn't like it. To you it was a nightmare.
In spite of the dogs, we seem to have reached an agreement with the governors. We were to hand the building back on condition that a commission should sit throughout the summer to make concrete plans and proposals so as to put our educational ideas into practice.
There'd be a sort of think tank in the college.
Some people were against it, but for a lot of us, our hopes were pinned on it. Our biggest mistake was allowing the principal to sit on the commission. We'd waste time debating with him, and in any case, he wouldn't give us the information we needed.
Well, I disagree. His presence gave the commission credibility in the eyes of the public, the establishment, and the press. Without him there, playing the charade of principle, it wouldn't have been possible for us to have had the eminent chairman that we did have, Lord Longford and Dr. Wall.
The Commission's dilemma was not the principal, but the clever and brutal move made by the chairman of the Education Committee, the total closure of the college the day after the end of the summer term, and until further notice.
The college stood derelict. It really looked as if they were going to pull it down.
And the grounds for that action were that students had broken the agreement with the governors, charges which were never substantiated.
We found ourselves in the invidious position of having to negotiate the reopening of the college. We were torn between the task of producing the blueprint and the task of negotiating.
And those are irreconcilable. Why we carried on after this, I don't know. We just did. It seemed the only thing to do. It was done to punish us, to teach us where the real power lay.
I still hold that authority rests with individuals until they relinquish it, as our actions proved only too well.
And somehow we should never have contemplated ever handing back that rambling building on Crouch End Hill.
For we only fooled ourselves that we were communicating with them. Even so, the members of the Commission worked all summer producing reports and figures that would become a new system for the college.
Roger Fitzpatrick produced detailed computer reports which proved that the new system could work.
But the college did not open on its scheduled date of September the 25th. The college is almost like a fortress. Coils of barbed wire are on the roof. Further, there are 20 or more radiating steel spikes, 18 inches long, at drain pipes and corners of the building. 23 ground floor windows, including the principal's, are now protected with iron bars. Some bulletproof glass has been installed in the reception hall. Special switches to cut off gas, water and phones have been put in. Along the passages, heavy double doors lined with steel have been erected, each with an intricate alarm system working independently. Alderman George Cattles, Education Committee Chairman, was anxious to add, "It is purely coincidental that all these things were done during the summer vacation."
It was announced that every student should be assessed before being allowed back. Consequently, students were thrown out, including a quarter of the students on the commission.
This notice says that only current members of staff and students will be allowed into the building when the college reopens next Monday. Well, today is Thursday, and I haven't been told if I've been re-employed.
Well, neither have I, and I've been teaching at Hornsey for 13 years.
We must discuss what we as a Commission are going to report. Are we to support this final plan put forward by the heads of department?
Well, I've been chucked out, so in circumstances, I don't see how I can.
Well, the plan depends on confidence and trust between the two sides, and I no longer feel we can express that trust.
You must tell us why.
Well, the victimization of the students, of course.
There was a time when we were naive and trusted people and believed what they said.
Well, what we were working towards was a continuous debate that went on throughout the education system throughout the year. Well, it seems that there's no way that that's possible now.
But as far as the outside world is concerned, we are becoming part of pop art. Part of the spectacle, the parade of titillation that passes in front of us all, to entertain us without disturbing us. So that even comparatively serious attempts at public debate pass through without touching or affecting us.
Large-scale critical thinking that was going on, it had to be kept running. So the canteen was run 24 hours a day, and the switchboard itself. And as we talked among ourselves, we also tried to explain what we wanted to the authorities.
So here we are, months later, watching ourselves being projected into thousands of other minds. It's very strange, more tragedy than comedy. Though now all we can do is laugh. We were training to be professional communicators, learning the techniques, the forms, how to do it, mostly the color supplement lifestyle. This used to be more important to us than the what we were supposed to put across. Then suddenly we found ourselves with something to say. We had a revolution to say, new experience and new meanings. Our training was useless. All the existing signs betrayed or caricatured our feelings. We had to grope for new ones. Now we were real communicators, desperate to do it and unable to do it, because no language was there to carry us to other students, to other workers, to people waiting for signs. We were shut in, isolated. We couldn't give birth. We had to invent a new language. But here instead, we find ourselves choking in old cliches all the time, neutered by BBC fairness that wasn't fair to us, turned into dummies. We've become a point of view, Jesus. I suppose we will have to go on trying to reinvent language. That's why we had to make this film you're watching now.
Every culture has a waste disposal system. It tries to filter out what isn't acceptable to that culture. I don't think that my work could be categorized in the terms of the course. It's just so much litter, you know. I got a litter bin out of the back garden which had litter please on it, and it was big enough. And I pinned a box of matches because that's all it was worth in those terms. You might as well burn it. They're so rubbish.
I mean, what's happening now so unexplainable. It's extremely sort of extreme is the sort of results of what happened before, but they're an extremely sort of invisible way, because it's the whole thing just collapsed on every level you can think of, and you know, I mean, you just can't film sort of collapse and things like this. You know, there's people collapse and there's college collapse and there's, you know, I mean, you're in a college and it's supposed to be a bloody nucleus and there just isn't one. You know, and so how can, you know, I really don't know, because you can't film the nucleus and things like this.
People began to break down under the pressure, and it's said that since the sit-in, 40 Hornsey students have been admitted to Fry and Barnet Mental Hospital.
Constantly sort of fluctuate from sort of feeling sort of pessimistic about things and then feeling that, you know, this is, you know, because you're sort of, during the sitting and things were sort of accelerated and things went through sort of stages at a terrific sort of rate, and you sort of tend to sort of think, oh yes, well, it's going to sort of go and something else will replace it and things, and I suppose it will, but I don't know quite how, you know, I don't quite know how to do it or how to get out of the situation or make it better or whatever it is. I don't quite know, really. Yeah. But,
I mean, the curious thing is that although it's been an absolutely awful year, one's felt terrible and ulcerous and angry and bitter, and all sorts of people have been smashed to pieces one way and another. Nonetheless, the overall feeling isn't of a loss, and that individually lots of us have even quite practically gained a great deal out of it.
When I first heard I'd been thrown out of college, I felt very bitter about it indeed, and I think after being in an art college for 3 years, having a completely stable position, knowing exactly what I was going to do, I suddenly found that I didn't have anything to go back on. I didn't have my diploma because I hadn't finished my course. I suppose I could have gone out and taken my work to design groups and agencies, but by that time I'd already come to conclusions about the place of the designer in society, and I decided that it wasn't really something that I wanted to do, not immediately anyway. I think mainly I didn't want to do it because during the sit-in, during those 7 weeks, I'd seen that I'd been part of a minority group with a very plausible argument, yet a minority group that couldn't be understood by the people we're dealing with, the Board of Governors, people like that, and generally wasn't understood by the rest of society. And I think this made me wonder whether, in fact, there were other minority groups who had just as plausible an argument as we had during the sit-in, yet met with the same lack of understanding. And that's one of the reasons why I think I came into social work.
The students, they were really just a mouthpiece for a lot of common feeling and ideas. And well, it succeeded up to a point. I think, yes, it did.
If one gets a diploma, the awful thing is that it'll fool people who you shove it under the noses of. And it will get you certain jobs, which is disgusting, and it means you're playing the game that you were fighting about last year. And it's quite difficult to know what to do.
I can't see the point of staying for a year and then just plodding your way through that year to do a bloody diploma. I mean, the basis of one of the main things in the revolution was get rid of it, and it just didn't happen.
Well, I'm wondering why I'm still at Hornsey. It caters for material, benefits, but that's all it is at the moment. Just a place to work.
I think what the sit-in did, it showed that 900 people together could be concerned with a problem of human beings rather than a conveyor belt problem of education. It showed you that 900 people in an active, dynamic situation were actually creating without having to resort to putting things down on paper or making objet d'art. They were actually, by the way they worked together and coordinated, by the way they appreciated other people's feelings and their sensitivities, etc., they were in a completely creative situation. And I think that this is something I wanted to take out of the art college with me, and I wanted to go into other situations where one could get groups of people to work in a creative manner without necessarily having to produce something which society is going to make use of afterwards.
So much has happened as a result of me now being able to do things that I wouldn't really have done before the sit-in. Look, I've tried to do things outside my department.
It taught me a fantastic amount, it really had. I think most of all it taught me to be able to sort things out and see things not in a new light but in a different way. And to a certain degree I've been able to carry that over right until now.
I could not go into a design office and design pine-stained furniture for elitist groups who could afford it. I'm not interested in producing objects which will be, in 20 years' time, put into Studio Vista paperbacks as indicative of 70s taste. This sort of thing doesn't concern me in any way at all.
One of the things I found very difficult is that I can't reconcile myself to putting pressure on people to get jobs, to get a flat. I mean, damn it, well, I don't see why I should. I've come to the conclusion that society stinks. I'm here to help people with problems. Yet when some guy comes in and he says, well, I don't want to work, and I mean, this is a problem, because unless he does work, society's going to pay no interest whatsoever to him. I don't really know what to say to him, I mean, basically, I say, yeah, I agree entirely with you. I don't want to work. Who does? Who should have to work? Who should have to become part of this lousy society, that's purely concerned with the individual and competition and money?
This is what the artist is all about. He's trying to find meaning in his environment. He's trying to understand what he is. He's trying to be aware.
One wants to be involved in a very positive way in a constantly evolving situation.
I would say that the first step to finding a meaning is to be aware. And if you find a meaning, then perhaps you can begin to control.
What was started partly at Hornsey has gone on elsewhere, and although we may have hoped for too much too soon, we may have got the time scale wrong, there's no doubt at all that it's all going on, it's all building up, and our sort of outlook is bound to prevail in the long run.